I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll determine the voting members. Melanie Anderson.
Present.
Mr. Clay. John Priestman's here. Mr. Fadley.
Present.
Mr. Moldenhauer.
Present.
Mr. Myers.
Present.
Steve Nelson. And Derek. Derek's here. Agenda item number 2 will be the meeting minutes from October 10th, 2017. Any errors or omissions? Yes, sir.
Just one which might have gone over the voting members is for voting, the absence of the two cities. So there won't be 4 voting members this morning.
Okay. We understand that? So, okay. Meeting minutes for October 10th, 2017. Any errors or omissions?
I have a correction.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm listed as being present, and I was absent. Harry voted in my place.
Any other errors or omissions? I'll entertain a motion to accept as amended.
Motion to accept as amended.
Motion by Mr. Fadley,
Second.
by Ms. Melanie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Rouse. We're very pleased today to recognize Ms. Terry Lynn Ross for 20 years of service as an employee. Thank you for everything.
Terry, can you turn around?
Please turn around. Would you like to say anything?
Terry, thank you very much.
Okay, agenda item number 4, our consent agenda. What's your pleasure?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Don't hurt your voice. Tap me if you need to. Motion by Ms. Anderson to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fadley. Yes.
I'd like to point out just one correction on agenda item number 5. The value that was reported and employment correction to the paper. It reported a value of $296. This is the last number, 3rd paragraph. Is that correct? The 440, the next to last figure in paragraph 3, 440 is changed to 306, and that's reflected in the corrected meeting agenda that was handed out this morning. But the report itself is correct, it's just the text in the front.
Very good. Any questions on the typo? That's all it was, just a typo. Yeah. Okay, motion by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Fadley to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we've got a new agenda. Jumping all the way down to agenda item number 9, agreement to prepare updated 5-year financial forecast.
Yes, Chair. We have an agreement from Public Service Management Group for a new 5-year forecast. What that means is that's 5 years beyond the budget that we're in. We'll prepare this forecast so give us some estimates on rates, if we should make any changes to our rates, the forecast for revenues and expenses. And we also have them to include a schedule of the capital finance plan as part of the state quality fund. That's part of the overall package included in the budget. So we recommend approval of the budget management agreement in the amount of $28,400.
And if I read this correctly, that's slightly but less than the budgeted amount that we had in the budget for that. What's the board's pleasure?
I move that we accept the agreement as prepared for updating the 5-year forecast with Public Risk Management Group agreement.
Motion by Ms. Anderson to agree with staff recommendations.
Second.
By Mr. Myers. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 10, annual maintenance contract, OUA elevated water tank storage tanks.
Mr. Chairman, board members, the OUA has 2 elevated water storage tanks on our water distribution system. One is located in Treasure Island, and the other is in the thriving metropolis of Buckhead Ridge. No, it's in Buckhead Ridge. We have to conduct annual maintenance on these towers to check for any deterioration, such as rust, and or to flush out the tanks and then disinfect them. We've been operating under a continuing contract with this company for many years, Utility Services Company or their successors as they have been bought out and changed names. With each year, and it's been there a lot of years, we've recently run into some issues with them providing us the appropriate documentation for these inspections, of which we did get the report delivered to us yesterday. But we also feel, due to their responsiveness or the lateness of their responses, that it might be in the best interest of the OUA to break this contract that we have with them and go out with an RFP or quote for other services out on the street. To be able to do that, per the contract, we have to get them the notice prior to the 90-day window, and we have presented to you 2 letters, one for each contract with Treasure Island, one for Buckhead Ridge, that would be able to terminate this contract that we have, and then staff would go out with a public offering to see what we can get as far as a new contract.
There any issues with breaching the contract?
Well, they're supposed to give with breaching the contract?
Yes.
Well, the only breaching per se was they were supposed to give us reports, written reports of their inspection so that we can have it in file should DEP or anybody want to look at it. And they were very unresponsive in getting us that report. We did get it yesterday, I believe, delivered to us, the missing report. But the issue is when we go back, I think our original contract was in excess of 10 years old. And so we feel that it's probably appropriate that we go back out. We will still include them in any offering, but still go out and get a new.
Did we put them on any kind of notice that they may be in breach with the delayed reports?
We haven't in writing. We've left messages and nobody's called us back. So we have not actually gotten to them that we are going to cancel the policy. The policy just says that if we are going to do it, we have to do it in writing. By 3 voting board members have to sign the letter, and we've got to get it to them in excess of 90 days, which is what we're going to do. Or what we're proposing to do, I should say, to the board.
I'm sorry, what?
The report that was delivered was 4 months late.
Okay. And the contract itself addresses the tardy reports?
No, sir.
Well, the way I understand it, they have performed now, right? Did you get the report?
Yes, sir, we do have a written report that was delivered yesterday.
So they've complied, other than being late, they've complied with the performance under that contract?
That is correct. But there is I think that was probably included in the board package, there is a clause in there that if we wanted to terminate either party, we had to do it 90 days in advance of the anniversary date of the contract.
And the anniversary date of the contract is what?
It would be like December 2nd or December 1st. Oh, the anniversary date is February 28th. The 90-day window begins like December 2nd. So we have to get a written notice to them prior to December 2nd.
Okay. And it doesn't specify any reason. The contract can be terminated for any reason, provided 90 days prior to the termination of the contract?
It says we just have to yes, that is correct. We have to give them a written notice. 3 voting board members need to sign the notice and get it to them 90 days in advance of the anniversary date.
And during the 90 days, they're obligated to continue performance under the old contract?
That is correct.
And all we're doing is just giving notice of termination without cause?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Board members, since they weren't responsive, I started calling other people as potential replacements. And I found 2 of the first 3 people I called had taken over a lot of their customers because they weren't satisfactory with the current vendor that we have.
What's the annual cost on this, John, do you know? No idea.
It's 8 to 9,000.
It's like less than 10,000. And the way they work, the way they set up this contract is there is a painting portion of the contract built into it, along with the annual cleaning and inspections. And so rather than coming along at, say, $2,000, and having a $30,000 payment, they structured the payments over years so that it's a flat amount of $8,000 to $9,000, for an annual payment.
It's an average payment. We would have to submit RFPs and or ask for request for proposals then to choose another.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And we've got till February 28th till this contract expires. So we got plenty of time if we notify them December 1st of the cancellation. I think you feel comfortable we can get another company in 3 months. You said they're responding, so they're obviously out there.
Yeah, all 3 have contacted and responded.
Okay. All right, gentlemen and ladies, what's the pleasure?
Well, this motion to terminate the contract, put them on, write the letter, and move forward with the RFPs then, because if they're not performing, and we certainly can't tolerate 4 months late on reports we have to have, because we certainly have checks and balances in place.
Motion by Mr. Fadley to proceed and start the RFP process for new vendor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Myers. Any other question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It was unanimous, John. You need it for the letter.
And while we're here on this subject, does it matter which members of the 4 voting members that we get to sign?
I'm not signing that. No.
I'd be happy to sign it.
I'll sign.
I'll sign.
There we go. That's all I do is sign. Thank you, John. Moving on, item 11. I'm working off 2 agendas here. Sorry. Item 11, OUA policy and procedure for sale of surplus property.
Mr. Chairman and board members, you have in your package a draft of the procedures for the sale and surplus of real property owned by the Okeechobee Utility Authority. I guess I'll leave a lot of that up to any questions that you might have. But basically, this policy will set the method for determination of whether or not a parcel can be deemed a surplus. The methods or procedures for disposing of that surplus property, selection criteria and guidelines for the sale of that property.
John, did you see that article I had talked to you about yesterday or asked you about it's B2, by the way, method of selection.
I didn't see an article.
Would you like me to read it now where council?
I see what you're talking.
Yes.
Yes, sir, that's fine.
You
That's
did.
fine. Anyway, let's go for questions, that'd be great.
Okay. That's the only question I will have when we're discussing it. I'll bring it up right now. In B2, Counselor, it says, method of selection, in the absence of specific board direction, the executive director has the sole discretion to determine the method to be used in disposing of surplus property. Neither the board nor executive director decision is subject to appeal.
This is on page 2.
So that concerned me if, like he said yesterday, that might not be in my pay grade.
At this point, you have certainly the right to question anything that's in this because it's a draft and it's presented to you all for discussion. Any amendments you wish to make to it, as long as they're not contrary to the statute, are fine.
Okay, I was just wondering if I interpreted that the way it's,
It was meant.
yes.
Yeah, we did too. What does that mean?
That means if you can't make a decision on which method best to use, it's up to the executive director to select among the ones that are set forth in the policy.
And keep in mind, this is not on the decision as to whether to declare a piece of property surplus. The property has already been declared as surplus, and then the method of disposal would be per board direction, or in the absence of that, would be by the director.
Yes, he can't do anything unless it's declared to be surplus property.
Okay. That answers that.
Yes.
That answers a lot.
You have the key.
Okay. Thought we were unilaterally turning it over to the executive director to just handle this without any board input.
No.
Boy, oh
No.
boy, oh boy. We might have a problem with that.
So would I.
And besides, if he selects the method and he brings it to you in the form of a contract, it's still up to the board to approve the contract. So, I mean, the board can't delegate a lot of authority to the executive director. You've still the governing board. All you're doing is setting a map that the director can follow.
Okay. Would you like to bring us up to speed on this, or just we open for discussion?
You're open for discussion.
I assume everybody's had a chance to digest this document. There's a lot here.
Well, again, essentially, it's the process to look at any of the parcels that are brought before you to determine whether or not they're of any use by the OUA, and if there being no use, then whether or not you want to deem it as surplus. After that, after it's been deemed surplus, it's just a matter of liquidating or disposing of the property. And there are only a select, per the statute, there's only a select method that we would use, whether that is to be for public sale or direct sale if it's a small enough parcel that has very little impact or use. That might be a direct bid sale to adjoining property owners. Or you certainly have the option of, I guess, even donating the land to an agency.
Fellow governmental entity.
I guess one of the questions that jumped out at me, and I might have missed it, but I read it a couple of times, was if we have an agricultural lease on a piece of property that doesn't terminate till, or doesn't come up for renewal till 2010, would that protect that piece of property to be put into surplus for sale or auction if it's already under lease? Or does that lease protect us from?
Not necessarily, but that would be something you would take into consideration in determining whether or not it was surplus. You'd sell it subject to the lease.
I would hate to breach a lease contract with somebody because we have a buyer and
But I believe those ag leases do have termination clauses.
We'd comply with the lease. I thought we had put something in there in the event of a sale.
There are termination clauses by either party in those ag leases.
that's in the ag leases.
Yes, sir.
Other than those two things, I didn't see anything wrong with the document as presented. I've asked my questions.
You can always adopt it and tinker with it if there needs to be something adjusted at a later date if there's a problem that arises.
I know in the past, we've talked about having something in writing to cover this.
Could you say that again for us, please?
No.
Yes, ma'am, it is there. It's like any of the other policies. It will be, in the toolkit, that if we get to that point where there are properties, and that's going to be one of the other discussions this morning, if there are properties deemed as surplus, how do we, as an OUA, under the guidance provided by the board, to liquidate or dispose of those properties?
Get this, is that a repetition?
Yeah, I see, we broke this into three pieces, so we don't have to determine in this motion the surplus properties or the method of sale. This is just the policies and procedures to accept. And as counsel said, we can tinker with that and adjust it as we need, so.
Yes, so this is only about the procedures of the policy only. Then we'll get into every other items under other agenda items.
Any other questions? Yes.
Here we go, on page 3, in the top of page 4, that second bullet appears to be this, and it's repeated again as the fourth bullet, so you don't need to say that but once.
Gotcha.
So we'll strike the fourth bullet.
I'd strike the second one. I'd strike the second one, and then it'll flow like it's supposed to.
It's under private sale.
Way to go, Harry. If you strike the one on the bottom of page 3, then it'll flow through with a period at the end of the fourth one, the new third one, like it should be.
Everybody see what I'm talking about?
I guess there's special emphasis on that one, to put it, repeat it twice.
Do we want to accept the policies and procedures and adjust them as needed in the future? Or we want to discuss this a little further?
I'm okay with it. Motion so stated.
Motion to accept the policies and procedures for the sale of surplus property by Mr. Fadden.
A second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's a start. Item 12, potential OUA surplus properties.
Mr. Chairman, board members, now that we have a policy and procedure in place, I would like to be able to present to you once again some of the parcels that the OUA owns at this time and bring them up for consideration as to whether or not the board would consider these as surplus properties. If you don't mind, I'll go through them one at a time, and we can either ask questions or discuss. The first parcel is what we'll call the Pine Ridge Park parcel. This parcel in Pine Ridge Park, the OUA acquired when we took over the Pine Ridge Park water and wastewater system. On this particular parcel was the water treatment plant that served Pine Ridge Park. A number of months ago, when the OUA did the interconnect piping between the OUA system and the Pine Ridge system, this plant was taken offline and demolished. The wells were capped, and the plant was demolished and removed. So it's now a vacant parcel of land. As you can see there, the parcel size is relatively small, 0.15 acres. Has a market land value as established on the Oakland Property Appraisers webpage right at $4,620. Based upon the policies and procedures that we just recently adopted, this parcel of land would certainly fall under the guidelines of a direct sale because it is very small, low value, and it's really of only use to adjoining property owners. it is large enough for the building department that a mobile home could be placed on this parcel. But again, it's only 5 acres and may not be of that value. So that's parcel number 1. Again, it is water treatment plant is gone. It is not of any use to the area. Labeled as parcel number 1 is a piece of land that is here in the downtown area. Just to refresh board members, this was a parcel of land that was purchased by the OUA back in the middle 2007, 2008. It was going to be the site of a future office building that the OUA at that time was contemplating building. Since then, we have basically just done the maintenance on it from mowing, trash pickup, and used every once in a while for some kind of public use, Main Street or whatever, for their celebrations. Again, the value of this parcel is shown as $436,500 is what we paid. Current just value, again, off the property appraisal webpage is $187,771. What would have to be determined whether or not this parcel is for sale is whether the intention for the OUA to build a new building anytime soon. 2 things I can offer up to you in your decision-making process. The OUA has been approached by a local entity wishing to buy this parcel, so there is some interest by at least one local entity that would be interested in purchasing it. The other thing I might share with you is our current office building. We did do an application for a historic rehabilitation, and that presentation was done by teleconference here maybe last week, 10 days ago, where I presented our proposal to the committee making the decision. There were 60 applicants. The OUA's application final ranking was 16 out of 60. So we had a fairly decent, very good application process. What we don't know is to whether or not that will be the final accepted ranking by the department, and then how much money they will propose in the state budget for these rehabilitation projects. I believe last year they had $10 million set aside. And if we got to project 16, I think was around $6 million. So are we in a good position to rehabilitate our building? Time will tell. That'll be up to you. If that means anything on where we're at with our existing building, that it may receive a historic grant from the state. So I throw that out there as to whether or not we keep this parcel or whether the board determines that it's surplus. Yes, ma'am.
May I ask a question here? If we are approved for this historic grant, and somewhere down the road we decide we want to sell the building, is that going to be a problem?
I don't know. At this time, I don't know what kind of stipulations or requirements, strings that will come with the historic grant, so I can't answer that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe it would, but again, I don't know that.
It's a very good question, because I've heard that in the past, that if they deem it historical or whatever, you cannot sell it at that point.
That would probably be a reasonable assumption, but again, without having gone through it and seen the actual, if you will, contract, if they give us one, for the grant, I don't know the answer.
The thing that concerns me about this parcel is the financial forecast for property, number one. We're taking a heck of a bath on this one. What it's appraised right now. Number two is what it actually appraises at, and what the interested party is willing to pay. But was that almost $250,000 bath on this thing? That's pretty it hurts.
There is no doubt that it could. One way around that would be, however we offered it up for sale, let's say it was a public auction, there could be a reserve set on that parcel that if it doesn't meet a certain level, let's say the appraised value, that it wouldn't sell. But again, this is one of those that's kind of it's kind of an unknown with the historic grant preservation of our building and what we do with this parcel. I can only offer up to you that there is an interested outside party that would wish to buy the property. No mention of any kind of dollar value. I mean, I don't know that. But just there is some interest, and that we do have the possibility of the historic grant. So there are some things kind of up in the air with this one parcel.
As we discussed the other day, with this historical grant, if we do get or successful with the grant, more than likely you would have to take the people out of the building while the construction was going on. Is there any way we could utilize that piece of property with construction trailers or anything of that nature to house our people while we're under construction? Put a big top in there, a tent or something? As I say facetiously.
With telecommuting being what it is, no. The answer to that is if we do get the grant, there's going to be two choices. We work around the construction debris, which most likely is going to raise the construction price, or we move out and give them free rein to do what they need to do to the building. In that event, my early thinking is that we would have to lease a building that has the ability for walk-in customers or drive-through customers because of the need for what we currently service, as well as, the electrical, internet, everything else that would be expected in an office complex of today. So the answer to that is probably would find a building to rent or lease for the time period that we would lose the office space.
Any other questions on parcel 1?
Parcel 2, we acquired this parcel through the tax deed sale, if you will, from the developer, Lambert Freshwater Development, that did not follow through on their developer agreement and paying their annual installments. We ended up with actually 2 parcels here making up parcel number 2. The combined parcel is a little over 100 acres. It does have water and wastewater services available to it. It is currently under an ag lease that turns out in 2020 at a $16,500 annual payment. Entertaining questions here, if there are any.
A couple of months ago, you said there was developer interest on this piece of property. Is that still there?
I have been contacted by a developer or a person interested in developing that parcel and other acreage around it. But that's as far as it's gone. I mean, the questions were about the ag lease, termination, whether water is available. And yes, it is. It runs along the western property line, and then that there is a sewer line out along the north property line. So water and sewer is readily available to that community. That is the extent of the discussions. I have no idea of how big, what they wanted to do with it, but there was a question.
They're not beating on the door, wanting to speak. They're not continually beating on the door.
Well, I think they heard through word of mouth that we owned it, and they must have been looking at other property, and that's why they reached out to us. I mean, on any of these parcels, is there a sign on the roadway saying property for sale? So I don't expect to get contacted other than the interest by surrounding property owners. But again, this is a parcel that from the OUA perspective, we do not foresee any OUA use of this property now or in the future for OUA. Parcel number 3 is similar to parcel number 2 in that it was acquired through the tax deed sale through non-payment of the assessments, non-ad-valorem assessments on the tax roll related to a development agreement. This was formerly known as Land Ventures of America, was the developer. The total parcel is right at 100 acres, 99 acres. It too is also under an ag lease that expires in 2019 to the tune of $18,000 a year. Again, this parcel is like parcel number 2. The OUA, as far as OUA use, there is nothing in the immediate future need for the OUA.
We don't have water and sewer available in that area yet.
It's not adjacent to the property. If you're looking at that picture, the yellow area to the left represents Kings Bay. So we have water and sewer in that area. It could be extended to the property, but it's not adjacent to the property.
John, is it location, the difference between 2 and 3 on the difference in the values? Because they're very similar in size.
That is a good question that I posed to the property appraiser's office, and I got a property appraiser answer, which I don't always understand. The best I can tell you is when they're doing the appraisal, they look at the possible use of the property, and this parcel's immediate use is for agricultural use, and is going to be, the value is going to be determined as an agricultural use. Whereas parcel 2, being very close to an urbanized area, I guess there is some influence on that parcel that it could be developed for residential use. They both have the same land use and zoning requirements, but I guess the property appraiser took into account the development close to and around parcel number 2. That's the answer I can try to give you. I don't know the answer.
The only difference I see here is in the parcel 2, Charles Harvey, it has a commercial activity center included, where along with the urban residential mixed use, where the Nubbins Loop property is just urban residential mixed use, so no commercial there.
But there is commercial around it, right?
Maybe that's
Yeah.
maybe that's why the value is different.
Well, it could be. Again, my feeble memory when I was looking this up, the land values on each parcel were very similar. I've only added them all up and showed you the total dollar amount. And again, in talking to the property appraiser's office, that's the only answer they could give me, is that they did take into consideration, I guess, in establishing that value, the nearby activity being, developable land, as opposed to parcel 3 is all ag property for the most part. What I would certainly suggest is that if it were deemed surplus and we put it up for public auction, clearly the bidders would establish, where that value is. And I would expect there to be a vastly different value on a per acre basis between parcel 2 and 3.
Okay.
Parcel 4 is a piece of property that we purchased back in 2002. The mechanism or the reason why we had to buy the OUA purchase this parcel was the expansion of the surface water treatment plant. In the process of the surface water treatment plant, there is water wasted from that process, in that we use it to backwash filters and other items, so there is water to be disposed of. So we needed to find a piece of property near the surface water treatment plant where we could build a pond for disposal of that water. That pond does show up pretty much right under the 4 that is in your board package. And the treatment plant, just for reference, is the big white area to the east. 6 parcels over to the east is a surface water treatment plant. We bought the property for around $400,000 in 2002. The just value off the property appraiser's website right now is a shade over $330,000. There is an ag lease on that property that expires in 2020, and it is a $2,500 a year ag lease. Certainly, in consideration of whether or not the board deems this to be surplus, I would share with you that we still need to retain control and ownership of the pond. And so this 66-acre parcel, if it is deemed, if we do agree that it's deemed surplus, I would propose that at some point in time we would, correct me Tom on the terminology, but do a de minimis survey of this parcel, breaking it up into 2 parcels. The one that would be deemed surplus would be the northern portion, which would probably be on the order of about 35 acres. The southern portion, which encompasses the pond, the OUA would retain ownership of that parcel so that we can control ownership and use of that pond in conjunction with the surface water treatment plant.
We also have the Flores property over there too, that little piece by the water plant.
Flores property is the parcel just to the west of the treatment plant. So it is 5 parcels from parcel number 4.
I have a question. It's about the ag lease. Why is it such a difference from the other 2 properties that it's similar in size?
You mean the value of
The
it?
value. Yeah, we've got one at 18,000, one at 16,000, and then this one is 2,500.
I will, you're asking a non-agricultural person here to answer that. I can only tell you of my visual representation. This parcel, when you look at it, the use of it is much different than the parcel 2 and 3 as far as the value or the ability to put cows on it.
The carrying capacity,
That
yeah.
the folks doing the bidding, when we publicly advertise this, knew that their cows per acre, if you will, were going to be considerably less on this parcel than the others. And that would be purely a guess on it.
Okay.
Yeah, large part of that property right up on Farrell Road is into the marsh. Yeah, the wetland fund.
Just curious whether
And yeah, they leased part of that property out for antennas, and it's fenced off. There's
several
a
reasons.
lot of lost property in there.
Well, if you go by and you look at it, I think at one time the western portion of this parcel was used as a reclamation area where they may have dug some shell or something out of it. So it's very, very low, and there are ponds in it. The whole property is very, very low. So my guess is that's probably figured into whoever was doing the bidding on it as to why the value of the annual agreement is so low.
My only comment on this deals with the breaking of the property into 2 parcels. The board needs to be fully informed, John, and I think if you did that, you should seek authorization to go on and break the property into the 2 parcels and then declare the 1 parcel as surplus if that's what staff wants to do. Then they've got a definite parcel that they've declared surplus rather than, right now we're dealing with the whole thing. And obviously, you don't want to deem the whole parcel as surplus. We're talking about a portion of it. That, I think, needs to be clearly defined for legal purposes as far as what the surplus property is with a legal description.
And clearly that was asked before, if you will, and this was brought up. And if that would be, I think that is a very fine point, that they can give us direction to have that survey done and bring that survey with the two portions, the north half or north portion and the south portion, for the board then to determine whether one or more of those parcels could be deemed surplus. And again, my position would be that parcel that contains the pond, we do have an OUA use. It should not be deemed surplus.
Well, my point is it needs to be definite as to legal description and to acreage size as to what you're doing on that.
That is correct.
If I recall from past discussions on this piece of property, isn't there a house up there on 78 too?
That could be on parcel 5.
That's a parcel. That's not this parcel.
That is correct.
Okay,
It's actually right next to the parcel 4, but that will be discussed on parcel 5.
How would we divide the property? What steps do we have to go through to?
You would authorize John to get the property surveyed, and if necessary, to do a de minimis. De minimis was when you break a single parcel into two or more parcels.
We could get an appraisal at the same time too.
That would be a future step. If it is determined surplus, that we would look at it once that's been done.
I think the process that I'm thinking, it would be, number one, the authorization to break it, get legal descriptions, and then get your survey. If you declare the parcel to be surplus, then to get the appraisal on the surplus portion.
Okay, well, that's information we need to know before we can deem surplus. So, can we go ahead and get started today? We can.
If you give him the authorization, right. But I think it's improper to try and designate a portion of that property surplus without knowing exactly what portion.
But a part of this discussion would be that they would entertain the thought of determining it as surplus, but to get to that point, we needed to do this de minimis,
Yes.
break it up. So the whole part of these discussions, and out of these 6 parcels, are any of them deemed surplus outright, or in the case of parcels 4 and 5, if it appeared that some of it could be deemed surplus, then to give staff direction to do the de minimis
Correct.
survey, legal description, and bring back both or all the parcels to the board to decide which ones can be deemed surplus and which ones the OUA are going to keep.
In my comment, the comments that I'm making you on this 66-acre parcel will also apply to the next one that you're going to address. Okay.
Any other questions on 4? And if not, I'll go to 5, and we can come back.
And do that on the 2 parcels that we decide to need.
All right. I'm saying while we're here, we do it, but go ahead.
But what's board pleasure?
But
I'd like to see what your plan is with 5.
Parcel 5.
I don't think I would like to see how you're going to split it before we talk about splitting it, before we agree to split it.
Okay.
Come back with a plan. Bring us something back.
We'll come back in 5 minutes.
All right, that's fine with me.
Parcel 5, if you turn the page, and you kind of see what we're talking about, splitting this parcel 4 into 2 pieces. When we go to parcel number 5, which is the front 5 acres to parcel 4, there is a house on it. It's in very, very poor shape. It's a 5-acre parcel. And again, there is the following sheet behind this gives you an idea of the way we would propose as staff to do the de minimis survey to break it up. But it would be staff's recommendation on this 5-acre parcel that we break it into 3 parcels, with 2 front parcels being 1 acre each that could be declared a surplus, keeping the 3 acres in the back, which would provide us a buffer to that storage pond. When the pond is loaded and it is wet, the northern portion of parcel 5 does get wet. So we would like to keep that 3 acres as a buffer, being our property, that we are not impacting a neighboring parcel. So as you can see, we bought this acreage in around 2009. Again, that was in the idea that the OUA was going to be growing with all of the developer agreements that were pending, and we were building towards the future that this parcel, that house, could be determined to be our supply yard, where we could receive supplies from different vendors, pipe, valves, whatever, to keep it separate from the maintenance barn and free up area in the maintenance barn for more maintenance use, whether that's trucks or equipment. That never happened. As you're well aware, the market did what it did, and so there was some retraction. We still needed this parcel, though, to give us that buffering from the storage barn. Since that time, the house has fallen into a state of disrepair. At one point in time, the board was considering letting the fire department utilize it as a safety training deal, basically a burn, if you will, but that never happened. I can tell you that the house has been broken into in the past for some temporary use by some people. They're no longer in there. The roof has been damaged in the most recent hurricane with shingles being torn off. There are openings in the roof. You can see daylight from inside. So the structure itself is been significantly compromised. But again, from a staff perspective, if you turn the page, if it is to go through this process of the de minimis survey, the breaking it into parcels, staff's recommendation that we would break 2 1-acre parcels in the front, fronting on 78, that could be declared in surplus, with the remaining 3 acres in the back being retained by the OUA as a buffer zone between the 1-acre parcels and the pond to the north. Again, the process would be as described, that if the board was so inclined to consider the surplusing of this property, direct staff to get the de minimis survey done, actual dimensions, lot sizes, legal description, and then bring that back to the board for determination as to what could be deemed as surplus and what we would own. So that in the deal describes each of the 6 parcels that staff is bringing to the board. We can do them individually, and you can so direct us which way you want us to deal with each of these parcels and provide appropriate direction as to whether they're surplus or de minimis survey and being brought back to the board at the December meeting for final determination.
It's right over by you, Derek. You looking for some property to do? So in this article, what is that, 5?
Yes, sir.
5, that would, what your recommendation is and what we're talking about is taking the 2 1-acre parcels and then the part just past the retention pond to take that out of the whole piece of property and deem part of it surplus.
Yes, sir.
The back part, the north part surplus.
By attachment to the OUA would retain ownership of parcel B1 and parcels B2 and B3, which are 1-acre parcels or approximately 1-acre parcels, could be deemed as surplus.
Surplus, and then north of the retention pond, there's some property there that potentially.
That would be on attachment 1, and it would be labeled as A1, could be deemed as surplus, and we would retain ownership of A2.
That's kind of what we want to go through both of them.
No.
I'll get it back. We'll keep A1 and A2 surplus.
Now, if the water plant goes to full capacity, would we need any expansion of that retention pond?
The pond was designed for its current permitted capacity. If we were to build a bigger treatment plant, say go to 10 MGD, then we may need more pond space. May. Right now, that pond has never been near capacity. So we would have to do further evaluations as to what the actual loading capacity is of that pond. But I can tell you that as you move north on the property, it drops off in elevation and stays wet. So if we were to build a pond there, we'd have to bring in a considerable amount of dirt, if you will, to make it actually function as a disposal pond. There is an outfall, as a typical design for most surface ponds, there is an outfall in that pond into
The ditch.
I guess Witten Ditch or the 7th Avenue ditch that runs north and south there. So there is a method for overflow, as an emergency overflow. And to my knowledge, it's never been used.
The 710 bypass is still being discussed, so the groundwater plant still could be in question down the road, right? And we would have to increase the capacity of the surface water plant?
Our current permitted capacity is 6 million gallons a day for both plants, 5 and 1. And our peak days so far have been around 3.3 million gallons a day. So we still have roughly anywhere from 2 to 3 million gallons excess capacity. The biggest issue that we have with the groundwater plant, though, is in the 04 storm season, before we got the canal pump station, that groundwater plant was the only source of water for about 4 days for the community until we got the bypass pumping arranged. We now since built the pump station on the Brent Canal, which was our backup plan for water to the surface water treatment plant. So currently what we use the groundwater plant for is primarily a repump facility, is the normal operating mode today. It is an emergency backup, but we still keep it ready to go in place in the service at a moment's notice.
Practically, we're not using the well field much at all anymore.
That is correct. Primarily, if you remember, that was a decision made because the water that comes out of the well field is very hard, very, very hard, and the water is softer coming out of the lake, so as to produce a better water quality for our ratepayers. We converted that primarily to a repump facility so that we didn't have to put this very hard water out of the system to our customers and ratepayers.
My question was future increase capacity out of the surface water plant, but it sounds like we're there now. You're just, by losing the groundwater, but it sounds like you're already there. You're depending
Well,
on us.
we do have some capacity still remaining at the surface water treatment plant. And again, we keep that groundwater plant. It's serviceable. It's operational. We can turn it on at a moment's notice. We keep it up and working permit-wise. So we could, with a minimal amount of effort, put it right back into service.
Okey-dokey. What do you suggest, Counselor?
The same thing that I commented a minute ago. Right now, this is one parcel. We don't have correct legal descriptions for each of the 3 parcels he's proposing. I think you need to authorize that to be done as far as the de minimis is concerned. And then if parcel B1, it would have its own legal description, and that would be declared to be surplus if that was the direction the board wanted to go. And parcels B2 and 3, B2 and B3 would be surplus, B1 would not be. But you need legal descriptions to make that correct.
We just want to take that under one direction for both parcels 4 and 5, for staff to go out and make that happen. Parcel 4 being split into 2 parcels, parcel 5 being split into 3 parcels, and that being brought back to the full board for consideration as to which ones to be deemed as surplus and which ones to keep.
That's on the drawing. Would you have A1, A2, B1, 2, and 3?
That is correct, sir.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to get it surveyed and start with the diminisher program.
Motion, Mr. Patton.
Second.
Second, Mr. Myers. Any further discussion? And this is to bring back for discussion.
For clarification, have you already done parcel 4?
Parcels 4 and 5 would be.
I'm sorry, as far as the motion is concerned, I'm trying to clarify. Are you talking both original parcels in this, or did we already do 4 and now you're doing
We have
5?
not done a motion on 4. I was trying to put 4 and 5 into one motion.
Okay,
All right, let's put 4 and 5 together and get real clear on what we're going to have as surplus and not surplus.
So we do if I understand it correctly, parcels 4 and 5, we do the de minimis survey to show the 2 parcels in parcel 4, 3 parcels in parcel 5, get the legal descriptions and bring that package back to the board for determination as to which parcels we keep and which ones we can declare as surplus.
Correct.
is that the tenor of your motion?
That's absolutely the tenor of my motion.
Very good, okay.
Mr. Myers, you happy with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, motion and second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 13, method of sale.
Sir?
Item 13, method of
No,
sale.
sir. No, sir. If I may.
You want to go
So
through
we
all the
go
parcels?
through parcels to determine whether parcels, High Ridge Park parcel, parcel 1, parcel 2, and parcel 3 are either of those as they stand deemed that we keep them surplus. Is that not true?
Could I suggest you take those one at a time,
Yes.
please? Okay.
Parcel 1 was the Pine Ridge Park that would be better utilized adjacent, as you said, and that
The
was.
first one is the small one. Pine Ridge Park would build a water treatment plant as a .15 acre, whether or not that could be deemed as surplus. That would be the motion.
I motion to deem surplus.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fadley, second by Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion?
Yes. Are there any issues with the ground as far as contamination or anything, being the fact there was a plant on there for so long?
There is none known, but we have not done any kind of audit like that. The only chemicals that I'm aware of that may have been there, is some chlorine used for disinfection. The treatment method they used, they basically aerated, disinfected, and pumped it out of the system. They didn't use any kind of chemical treatment whatsoever. There was not a generator there, so there's no
Fuel?
belief that there would be fuel spill. So if you're asking me, my thought process is there would be no contamination there, and it would be sold, of course, like any other parcel as is.
But you don't know.
We have not done any kind of audit, no, sir, none. Again, we can only go by the equipment that we saw there when we took it over. It was a 55-gallon drum, I believe, of chlorine, bleach, and that was the extent of it. There was no generator there.
Mr. Conner, is there any latent liability if we sell that without testing it first?
If there's contamination, they come back on the owner, the prior owner. I'm not sure what the contamination would be if it consisted of a well and water storage and treatment. How many wells were on the property?
I believe there were 4 very shallow wells that were capped by a well driller.
And a storage mechanism?
There was a small concrete tank that has since been removed, and inside the building structure, there was a hydro-pneumatic tank which floated on the system pressure, and that also has been removed.
And the treatment took place on that parcel?
The only treatment was aeration, if you will, and then disinfection. There was no chemical treatment to the water before it left.
Disinfection by liquid chlorine injection?
Yes, sir.
Sure might be some chlorides in the ground, but
There could
probably
be.
nothing else.
And I don't know what the levels of those are.
Well, if the grass is growing, it's probably not too high.
Well, or with the few septic tanks that might be in the area, it still might not be very much. I'm just saying, it's not like there were alum or diesel fuel from the generator. That is certainly not expected to ever be there.
The risk is always there.
Okay.
It's always there. I think it's minimal here in this case. Sounds like it to me.
Let's take a vote.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sell it.
Surplus item.
Parcel number one is the downtown parcel, which we again had projected to be an office complex for the OUA. What's the pleasure?
Not surplus. If there's any hint we could use it down the road, I'd like to hang on to it.
Especially if we get this historic grant and we find out, we may need it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to put an office on 4 and 5?
Right.
I mean, that's closer to the treatment facility.
To buy out by the lake.
Yeah.
I can tell you background on that. We looked at buying the bank building, Seacoast, at 18th Terrace on the Taylor Creek Isle side, 18th Terrace at 441 Southeast. At the time, the board's pleasure was we're not leaving downtown. So it was never actually looked at any further than that. Even though the bank, had its tellers, had its backup generator, it was very close to many of our ratepayers. The issue was at that time, we're not leaving the downtown area. So that's why they went and looked at this part. Different board, different times, things could change, but that's why I was looking at that.
Different property values as well.
So as I take it, parcel one, we would retain ownership of that until
Let's
sometime.
continue on with discussion. We had, Jeff said he wasn't in favor, I'm not in favor, Melanie's not in favor to surplus. Michael? No.
Parcel number two, then, sir. That is the 100 acres, 101 acres on Charlotte Memorial Highway,
Still freshwater?
formerly freshwater.
I think we should hold on to that one because property values are going to go up and it'll be worth more and it's paying for itself now.
Is it?
Sir?
Is it paying for itself?
It's not costing
It
you.
is not costing us anything in the sense that we don't have to mow it or upkeep it. That's under the ag lease. So it's $16,500 a year that we get off of that property. So the answer to that would be yes, it's paying for itself in the sense of $16,500 every year.
At any time in the future, there is developable interest, people want to come in and talk to you, please bring it back to us. We can deem it as surplus at that time.
You can, absolutely.
Okay, so
Let's keep it.
if there's an interest for development, please bring it back and we'll discuss it again. At this time, I agree with you.
Parcel number three. Again, if you use that same terminology, at $18,000 a year, we have no expenses, so it's paying for itself. But again, under the idea that we really don't have any foreseeable use for it, and whether or not we're in the land business, what is the pleasure of the board as far as no surplus, wait for the future land values to go up? I mean, what's the pleasure?
I think it benefits our ratepayers to wait for land values to go up.
Yeah, if it's paying for itself and it's not, I would rather hang on to it.
I tend to agree unless somebody comes in and wants to do something beneficial with the property, and then we can certainly open it up for discussion.
Question on that. The $619,000 just value, we're not sure what that would sell for actually. Could that chunk of money help alleviate our debt to offset the loss of the $18,000 a year?
Well, clearly, if not only would we be able to pay down some debt possibly with the sale of either parcel, whether it was the parcel 2 or parcel 3 or any of 4 or 5, we would have several options open to us for the use of that money. Paying down debt is certainly one option that's always available. The other option that is looming before us is the Treasure Island project being, $20+ million, almost $25 million. If that project was to receive the appropriate funding mechanisms from outside sources, and this board is deemed to go forward with that, we could then use the offset of this cash to not borrow money, which would again then lower our debt. But we could sell the property at any time.
Okay.
It's just that timing wise, again, what I've been told, that the appropriate time to sell it is in the springtime, as opposed to the summer. I'm not a real estate person, I will leave that to our realtors to come up with that, but that's kind of what I was led to believe.
Okay.
So that's the timing of this mechanism now. So, no, we don't have to sell it. It's of no added work to me because it's under an ag lease, and the leaseholder is supposed to keep up with the fences and the gates and the maintenance of the property. So it is of no work to know we have to keep these ag leases.
Well, based on that, so this time I say no surplus, just hang on to it.
I agree.
And we've already handled 4 and 5. However, I would ask this only if the idea was to hold the other properties for land value, do we then need to really go, do you have the same thought process on 4 and 5, and do we need to spend the money to do the survey and the minimus if we're still going to hold on to the property?
Do we need cash right now?
No, sir.
Then hang on to it till the price goes up. Might as well save the money. And if that's a staff recommendation, I think it's very reasonable. Then hang on to it. Don't, let's not spend the money on the survey. Survey won't be cheap. Something that big. That's a lot of boundaries.
But you've already authorized that on 4
So
and
you're going
5.
to rescind your motion and
Yep.
do the minimum.
And it won't hurt to have that done in advance anyhow. I mean, that'll make it easier when the time comes. So I don't have a problem with the prior action that was taken.
Right, so you're okay with spending the money then, just having that information for later use?
Yes.
All right. Keep the motion in place then. It's already been granted.
You're saving time because you'll already have that in place. If the market changes, you're not having to wait and get that done. I think it'll make things easier to be able to come in with a recommendation from staff on the portion they want to declare surplus out of 4 and 5.
All right, very good.
I'd like to also consider donating that house back to fire rescue to utilize it to demo it for us and get it out of the way. Then that might make that property a little more appealing down the road.
I don't think they'll demo it.
No, they won't.
They won't demo it. They'll just burn it.
Well, they
we have to
would
demo it, right?
burn it, but then the thing that it was suggested to me, if you do that, again, I'm outside of my realm, I'm not in the building department, the planning department, but by doing that, you only have a certain time frame to rebuild and being grandfathered in. If not, then you would have to meet current building department requirements. So I would only suggest that if we're going to demo it or do that, we in turn sell it very quickly so the new owner could partake of the previous, if that's at all permissible, I don't know. So essentially what we're doing now is holding on to it unless we do want to turn it over to the fire safety folks, and then the new property owner would have to do what they want to with that parcel.
Well, another concern, though, you've already said there's been people going in there and doing things.
That is correct.
You know, we have the attractive nuisance issue that if someone goes in and gets hurt, who are they going to sue? The owner. You know, we need to be cognizant of that there. And
Is it posted, properly posted?
There is nothing posted on the property as far as no entrance. The doors are locked, the windows are locked.
Means nothing.
That's not enough.
The status of it.
It needs to be posted.
Well, I'm just telling you from my other seat where I sit, that's an issue, and we need to address that.
Okay, well, we can put some posted signs on there for sure.
Whatever we need to do. You know, but just having the door locked and the window shut is not near enough.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll post it, I guess, and then burn it down later when we think we're going to sell and make it a appealable piece of property at that point.
That's what we'll do. So we'll get the survey done and bring that back to the board. Well, actually, we don't have to, If we're not deeming it a surplus, we could just do it and have it done.
Well, at least you could bring it back for consideration once you've got it established in fact.
Okay. Well, that being said, I don't know that agenda items 13 will be
Are you going to go back to parcel number 1?
parcel number 1. They already said they deemed it a surplus.
And what's the method of sale?
Yeah, we need to discuss
That would
that.
be on item 13.
I thought parcel one we were keeping.
That's far as Pine Ridge Park.
The Pine Ridge Park,
The
parcel of the
visible.
water treatment. I'm sorry, you're correct. It's parcel.
I'm sorry,
It's a Pine
the
Ridge
first
Park.
parcel. Okay.
So that's it as far as the surplus property is on item 12.
Item 13, method of sale of the surplus property.
Now, Mr. Conley, item of sale for the.
I'm sorry, okay, okay. I'm ahead of the game, all right. Behind them.
Do you wish to take it, or you, again, the value of this parcel as established by the property appraiser's website is around $4,600, if I remember correctly. It is a very small parcel, 0.15 acres. By the policy that was adopted earlier this morning, the private sale is the most representative way because of the small nature of the parcel. Even though it is buildable for a mobile home, we probably would look at the private sale, and that would be to send out formal requests or notifications to adjacent property owners that it is available.
In lieu of auction.
In lieu of auction. And being, even if it was an auction, just this one parcel, I don't know if any of these auctioneers would be interested in coming over for a 0.15 acre land sale.
Yeah, there's not enough value there for them to waste their time in, I don't think.
I could point back to the initial item that you were questioning in the policy on the discretion of you can throw the ball over to the executive director to suggest the select the method of
I
sale.
understand now wholeheartedly.
I think they deleted that reference.
Now, in the private sale, then, what happens if neither of the adjacent property owners are interested?
You don't sell it.
It just doesn't sell. You can't sell it to anyone else
Probably not. I mean,
in a private
you
sale.
could always advertise for bids, but it's,
What's the pleasure of the board? We look at the parcel, we contact the adjacent owners and see if there's interest, and if not, we'll.
Yeah, if not, then we could put it out for bid or whatever to
you could, yeah,
private sale seems to be the cheapest way to go anyway.
it is.
All right, motion to contact the adjacent landowners, see if they're interested. If not, put it up for bid.
Motion by Mr. Fadley,
Second.
and Mr. Myers. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
More work, John.
The rest of that motion then obviously will, the rest of the agenda item, as far as for auctioneers, could be for informational purposes only, since all the rest of the properties have not been deemed as surplus.
We will revisit that when we deem surplus
Yes.
property surplus. Moving on, agenda item number 14, state revolving fund application process.
Again, moving forward with the direction of the possible project with the Treasure Island. We have looked at the request for inclusion, which is the first step in the SRF process, just through the state revolving fund. The next step is we have to do the planning documentation, and Eckler Engineers has in the recent past done a design memorandum for several different sites for gravity sewer, vacuum sewer, low pressure in several areas within the Okeechobee area. Staff has certainly looked at, contacted Eckler Engineers to assist us, as well as the earlier approval for PRMG to do the rate efficiency study. Staff has certainly recommended to the board, by use of the proposal that you see in your attachment, that Eckler Engineering be engaged to help complete this planning document that would accompany the RFI, the request for inclusion to the state revolving fund. Eckler Engineers does have a proposal in the attachment in the amount of $10,500 to help complete the planning document, a portion of which includes an environmental assessment that would be done by a sub-consultant to Eckler Engineers to look at the route and do the environmental assessment for the force main from Treasure Island to the Cemetery Road facility, our regional facility up on Cemetery Road.
This is a step that if we have deemed Treasure Island, this board, is our objective, is our priority objective this year with the support of the Board of County Commission and City Council. So this is the next step that we would need to process that.
In looking at the total process of the project of $24 million, certainly as staff we have filed an application with one agency for a grant, development of video, for a grant. We have gone to the state to talk to our legislative body, both the representatives and the senators, to see if they would have funding assistance. As the other end of that, the bulk of the money we are going to have to do alone. And the two options are the state revolving fund, and the other option is through the USDA. To get through the SRF process, we do have to do this planning document. So that would be the other element of the funding mechanism to complete the project.
And if I understand this correctly, it says do not to exceed the fee of $10,000.
Again, the only thing that we do know for sure is the quote from the environmental assessment team, because Eckler Engineers is using some of their documents that they've previously prepared. They might be able to pull all that together quicker and easier, and so that's why it's a not to exceed amount of $10,500 is their estimate.
Support's clear.
I would motion we engage Eckler in preparing the document, since they're already a couple of steps ahead, it sounds like, and stay within the 10,000 maximum and procure the document to go forward.
Just for clarification, 10,500.
Excuse me?
10-5.
10-5, yes.
Motion by Mr. Fadley to proceed with Eckler Engineering, not to exceed 10.5.
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Discussion on the motion. Being done, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
As a very late addition to your board package that was emailed out to you, I don't know exactly when Tom received it, but I got it Friday after the board packages that were delivered, and again on Saturday by somebody else, a consultant that worked on this project, Whispering Pines. The board is aware of the CDBG, that grant, which was awarded maybe a year and a half ago, $750,000 to Okeechobee County to provide potable water distribution network to the Whispering Pines area, which is like the east end, if you will, of Basswood area. They have gone through the process waiting, to get the state documentation, the contracts and everything in order. Well, they were delivered to the county. The county signed off on it. Now we need an agreement between Okeechobee County and the Okeechobee Utility Authority, of which was included in your board package that was emailed out to you last night and presented to you today. The issue here is, I think, Tom, you've reviewed it. We're basically agreeing that we are going to do the proposed work with the amount of $690,000 in the grant funds, and the OUA would be on the basis to finish the project if it was over the $690,000 of the grant funds given to us. And so an area map was provided to you just to remind you of what it is we're talking about doing here. The DEP applications, I believe, are already in hand. Much of the final documents are being reviewed by OUA staff as we speak. So hopefully we could be going out to bid first part of the year. I can tell you the only question I had with this grant agreement was at the bottom of page 1, which states that we shall be completed by March 30th of 2019, which I went back to the grant consultant and told him that will be very, very hard to do. Because once the bids are received, they have to go to the state for approval, and we might go through 60 days to make the paperwork go from the OUA to the county to Tallahassee, reviewed and approved, and back to us. So out of maybe potentially 15 months from today being done, we're going to lose a couple months in the review process. It's just the way it is. I mean, that's the normal procedure. So they have agreed to extend the March 30th deadline to June 30th of 2019.
So it's a non-issue.
It's better.
They give you 3.
It's better than March 30th.
All right, need a motion?
Yeah, I'd have to rely on council because I got it this morning. I didn't get a chance to review this document. If you're happy with it, I'm happy.
I'm happy with it. You're going to have it. It's a missing link
Okay.
as far as the grant is concerned, so
There we go.
we're bowing before the altar.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to execute this contract with the county.
Motion so stated.
Motion by Mr. Fadley. Second. Mr. Myers. Discussion on the motion.
With the amendment of the date.
With the amendment of the date? Or
Sir?
is the date going to, Ms. Anderson asked about motion with amended date.
From March to June.
That could easily be, that is going to be the new date. So if you want to make the motion that we accept this agreement pertaining to a June 30th of 2019 date, that's fine too.
Yes.
Okay, that way I don't have to.
So stated.
it until we see the final.
Okay.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're Mr. Irby today. Public comment, item 16. The items from the public.
Mr. Mealy, got anything to say?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right.
I'm at a loss. I usually use this as idle time while Frank's talking. It's just missing. Items from the attorney, Mr. Conley.
Where do I start?
The beginning.
I'll start it easy. Does the board want to continue meeting here? We've got agreements that have been propounded to the county and to the clerk. I've approved them and they've approved them. Does the board wish to continue meeting? Because I thought we'd have those here to present to you for formal approval. Apparently it's going to be in the December meeting. The county just took this up. Did they agree to kick us out, or do they still want us here?
The county approved it last Thursday. Do you have anything from the clerk? Do you have anything from the clerk's office?
I haven't gotten a response on the clerk, but as far as I know, it meets, all the formalities are met, and it's agreeable. I don't know whether it's been signed by her yet or not. I sent an email to Laura McCall last week, so.
As of yesterday, I don't have that, so that's why I was going to bring it back at the December meeting along with the BOCC did approve it last Thursday.
Okay.
We can have those documents, and we have to have that discussion whether we would continue on for 12 months.
When we present the documents. When we present the documents at the December meeting.
That is
At the
correct.
next meeting.
That
Okay.
is correct, sir. And then, of course, the other question we have to, obviously touch on is whether or not we accept the 12 months or whether we go to the expense and move back to our facility. But that would all be discussed.
December
at the
meeting.
December meeting, yes, sir.
Fair enough.
My concern, Counselor, is timing. In the interlocal agreement, it was agreed to by both parties that we would have our meetings videotaped, but we may utilize this facility. We could go anywhere we wanted. if this board deemed to go back over there, would we have enough time deciding in December to start in January with getting, I guess all he would be is a camera. We just have to be put on. Would we have enough time? I'd hate to not have a contract or, delay the contract.
Well, the way I see it, it would be most prudent to go on and approve the agreements and to continue meeting here unless you wanted to terminate it in that process. Because it's not costing you anything to meet here.
Sure. It's great for you, but I'm just saying, if the board deemed that, would we have enough time to make that transition by January to meet the interlocal agreement?
Well, they'd have to take that into consideration.
That's the only, I know we're going to discuss this in December, but that's something that's in the back of our mind. Are we going to have enough time to execute all this? If we decide to?
That's a very short period. You're only talking about a month, and you may have to utilize those agreements until,
Okay.
but I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think the county does either.
I would say let's have that discussion in December, and if that is the board's direction, then there's nothing to say that we can't move the January meeting to later in the month to give us a few extra weeks if that's what's needed. But if the board's direction at the December meeting is to move back to our facility, again, that's a big if, but if that's the board's direction, we will work towards that and make it happen. I mean, it's just what's given to us.
And I have one more question, and I think it's pertinent to ask it right now. We had to adjust our schedule because of the Board of County Commissioners for the December meeting. Is this a one-time thing, or is this going to be something we're going to have to adjust monthly? I mean, are they moving their meetings?
Again, I can't speak for the BOCC, but I would take that as that was the exception rather than the rule.
Okay.
We would have to pose that question to the BOCC or somebody within the county. My take on it is, just like our meetings are well advertised in advance, so to move a meeting date is pretty much I think is the exception rather than rule. That would be my guess.
I guess I'll ask this since I see Robbie sitting back there. Is this have you changed your meeting dates? Is this something you've changed, or is this a one-time thing?
That was an exception.
That was the answer I was looking for.
Well, again, with the advertising required, people set their agenda weeks in advance to know for me. I would take it that it is the exception. However, that being understood, primary use of this facility is for the BOCC, and they are allowing us to use it. So when it does happen, we will.
It's not a
We
problem. We worked it out very well. It was not an issue for us. I was just wondering if this was the new deal. We were going to be on the first Tuesday instead of the second Tuesday.
Yes, that was correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Second item, Pine Ridge Park is a continuing festering problem with us. It appears when we negotiated the contract, we acquired a deed for all of the wastewater treatment plant property. And in the agreement, we're supposed to convey all of that property back to the original owners, except we're going to retain a 60 by 60 square where our treatment pump station was going to be located, lift station. It appears that in the process now, a fence has been built around the 60 by 60. The fence encroaches. It's not on the line. It's created a problem on the north side because it encompasses more property than what we're supposed to have. We just discovered this, and we've gotten a survey now, and it's going to require, and this is information for right now, it's going to require three things. Number one, it's going to require another little addendum to our agreement, whereby we agree that they're going to have to convey to us an additional piece of property to cure the encroachment. And we're going to have to agree that when we convey the property back, we're going to be keeping what we're supposed to keep within the confines of the fence. The third portion of that is we had to get a partial release, or the seller had to get a partial release from a mortgage to make this deal happen. So we're going to need another little partial release for it's 1.8 feet in width, strip. But it seems, I don't know why that this can't be corrected by getting the fence reconstructed, but John will have to answer that. We didn't build the fence. The fence was built by a third party. And why is it, John, tell them why and again, I'm already in the process of drafting these things, but.
We have two options. This is under contract by a local contractor to build the pump station and do the fence. It's a pretty substantial fence. So we have two options. We had an option to speak to the adjoining landowner that is going to get the parcel reverted back to them to see if they were in agreement with this change that Mr. Conley is talking about. Or we could go to the contractor and say, tear it down and put it back where it's supposed to be. Those are our two choices.
What kind of fence is it? What kind of fence?
Chain link fence. It's pretty substantial. It's, the posts are probably, posts on the corners, barbed wire on the top. It was just one of those issues that if the property owner said no, then we were prepared to tell the contractor, tear it down and put it back where it's supposed to be. If the property owner said it's not an issue, they're okay with it, then we're okay with it also. It's just one of those type of deals. It is not on the OUA to fix this. This is up to the contractor to repair. And up until this point, they have absorbed all costs for this proposed fix with the survey.
And you've reached out to the owners.
I have spoken to one of the owners, and they, at the time, verbally committed that that is not going to be an issue. They would be receptive to that.
I'm going to document this.
I'd feel more comfortable having it right.
I'm going to document this, because it's a cloud on the owner's property. We'll get through, and the fence is owned by us, and it's on their property by 2 feet. That's a problem. So I'm already drafting the documents that will cure that. That's information only. We'll need approval down the road to approve the addendum on the agreement, but don't worry about it right now.
We do have the option, though, to go back to the contractor to do it right.
That is always an option.
Okay. At no cost. At no cost.
At no cost. No, it's not. It is not up to us to remedy this fix in any way, shape, or form. That's why I'm saying the survey work, everything up to this point has been on the contractor's dime to do the sketch, the legal description. It is not up to us to do the fix, other than they asked us, could we reach out to the property owner to see if they would be receptive to it, and that's the extent of my involvement. I reached out to one of the property owners, and they said, yes, they would be okay with it.
And I have the survey. I have the new survey.
There's a mother and a son involved in this. I believe sorry. And I spoke to the son that was involved with the property. I reached out, I emailed both the mother and the son is the one that contacted me back and talked to me about it.
Mother and son sell the property, that's probably when we'll have a problem down the road. That's my concern.
Well, obviously, if we're going to prepare the documents, I would think they both, I don't remember seeing the original deal, but I'm sure both of them would have to be executed by both, I'm assuming.
Yes, yes. My third item, we had a surprise yesterday. OUA has been sued, and John emailed this to me yesterday, and I got in touch with my good friend Harold Melville. He represented us in the OUA. He's represented us in another matter with the property out east of town. I'll circulate these to you. Harold has agreed to represent us, but I spoke to John about this. I'd like to be sure nobody knows about this. This is just this fresh. I would like to be sure that we don't have insurance coverage on that before we hire Mr. Melville. He has generously offered to represent us, quoted us, and that's an engagement letter. But I'd like to get to the bottom of this as far as insurance is concerned. How many, have we got enough of these?
I think this is it.
Yeah.
This is a matter that started back in '09. I thought it'd been pretty much laid to rest. We had meetings with the owner back in 2014, and we did what we did, he did what he did, and we did what we did as a result of what he did. So there's a lot more involved than what you see in the complaint here. I don't want to discuss it any further here in an open meeting. In the future, I know that we're going to have an executive session, which is it's closed to the public with the attorney to get to the bottom of our positions on this. I'm giving this to you for information right this minute, but I would ask that if we determine, because time's short on this, if we determine that we do not have the insurance coverage from the liability standpoint, that the board authorize the employment of Mr. Melville to represent us in this matter.
Again, when you look at the complaint, the response time was very, very short on this. That's why when I got served yesterday, we elected to bring it to the board now, and Tom elected to reach out to Mr. Melville that he would represent the OUA for this matter, and that's why we have a very short, I think it's 20 days with which to respond. Of course, I guess we could get extensions, but it's a very short time frame to be able to respond to this complaint.
You're looking for this board to authorize Mr. Melville's
Provided that there is not insurance coverage that provided defense
defense.
on a liability issue like this.
Entertain it.
So moved.
Ms. Anderson motions. Second. Discussion.
Who's second?
Mr. Meyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Lovely. Awesome.
Well, that concludes my moment of the limelight. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Always a pleasure. Item 18, items from the executive director.
I have nothing.
Okay, items 19, items from the floor.
You'll see in the
Don't
notes.
try me.
A lot of these are basically for informational purposes. There was the Tallahassee trip which came up where both the county, the city, and the OUA were represented well by the legislature, either meeting with representatives or senators up there to discuss the needs of Okeechobee. There is and I'll be happy to entertain any questions. We do have filed both through the House and the Senate the request for the Treasure Island project, which was represented quite well by the city and Okeechobee County in Tallahassee. They will be having committee meetings coming up over the next few weeks, of which I will probably have to go back for those committee meetings to make the presentation if our representative or our state senator does not do that. So that is coming up. And certainly I'll be able to answer any questions we might have on the Tallahassee trip. Following that, there is the Okeechobee Legislative Delegation meeting coming up on the 20th. It is a luncheon meeting. Any and all board members, public, are certainly welcome if you so wish to attend that luncheon with Representative Clayton and the Senator Thursday. Reminder of the December board meeting is moved to the 5th. Just as a reminder, we do have historically we have had an annual Christmas luncheon, and that is going to be held on December 7th at the Maintenance Barn again for a lunch. Very good eating. You all are more than welcome.
When?
December 7th, Friday, at lunch. Thursday, sorry, corrected me. Is that Thursday? Okay. Sorry, they tell me what I need to know here. Thursday, December 5th, sorry, for the luncheon, and y'all are more than welcome, encouraged to attend. Oh, geez, sorry. December 7th, luncheon, I'll get it straight here.
I'm following along, go ahead.
I'm homered.
It is very good eating. You'll get to meet, much of our staff will be there from the treatment plants, maintenance, admin. It is a very good time. I would certainly ask if you all attend if you can. There is a question, I need to get direction from the board in the annual budget. There was an allocation for an employee bonus. Again, historically, typically, the board has authorized me to be able to allow those to be distributed at this time of year. So it's a slate of 1.5%, is that correct? In the budget for the bonus, if you will, for the employees. And I would ask the board consideration if we could still do that again, and we could give those out at the luncheon on the Saturday.
We'll do that now. Let's entertain a motion to distribute the bonus checks at the Christmas luncheon.
Motion to distribute bonus checks at Christmas luncheon.
Second.
Fadley, Ms. Anderson, discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank them from us if we're not there.
And again, at the December meeting, certainly, at the December meeting, there is this issue of, as Mr. Conley brought up, the meetings we have completed, or as of December, we'll complete the tentative, the first agreement, and certainly in the works through the BOCC, the clerk of court, will be a 12-month contract to continue meeting here. Along those lines, again, I was asked to, will update if you so elect to not utilize this facility and wanted to use the OUA facility, what the cost and the times to go back to using the OUA board meeting room, and what that would ultimately cost the OUA. And we'll do that at the December meeting. The early numbers haven't changed much from the last time we talked about it as to what the cost would be to install a camera or cameras. We already have the sound system, and then of course we would need the software that would pull it all together so that we could either post take the late issue of the meeting or real-time posting of the meeting. But I can bring all that back at the December.
Okay, did you reach out to ICS and get a hard number for us?
We've already got all that from Acela, which provides the software and the equipment, and then somebody to install, mount the camera, do the cabling. That's already in place. I know those things.
Thank you.
So,
And John, this going forward, this 12 months here, they're still not charging us anything?
I don't have the other agreement through the clerk of court, but it's my understanding that is correct. It's just going to be a continuation of the current contract. There is one other item. There's the other item that we have in front of you is the issue that was brought up through the use of the urgent care Treasure Coast as it relates to some of our employees that have HSA accounts, the health savings account. There's been some determination made that provided under the current HSA guidelines that with that high deductible plan, having another, if you will, a free service provided by the employer outside the confines of their facility is not in agreement with IRS guidelines. And in working with our insurance agent as well as Treasure Coast Medical and others, this amendment that you have in front of you, which means that the HSA employees will have, if you will, a copay that is a reasonable fee at fair market value for the services rendered by Treasure Coast by the urgent care facility is up for consideration by the board. It does not change the contracted amount between urgent care and the OUA. What it does signify is that employees that have HSA coverage will have to use their HSA debit card and pay a fee for the use of that facility. So it will increase the cost to those HSA employees for the use of urgent care. So I would ask you to consider that amendment, and if so, consider adopting this amendment to the contract with Treasure Coast Medical Associates.
What's your pleasure?
What's staff recommendation?
I would recommend agreement with the first, for this first amendment. I would agree with it.
I'd motion it. As stated.
That unfortunately, a motion by Mr. Fadley,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Anderson. That's a cost that's passed on to the employee,
Only
unfortunately.
those employees that have the HSA account. And again, this is, like earlier real estate questions, this is something that has been worked out through Treasure Coast, and my understanding through our insurance agent and others that have delved into it, that this meets the IRS requirements. That we do have to charge the HSA employees this fee.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Last but not least, I think you'll find that in your plate setting, just for informational purposes, the latest and greatest Treasure Island cost for the project. Again, this is something that kind of was developed through the legislative meetings, and basically it's just provided for information showing that the cost of the project is still in the realm of $24 billion, with approximately 2,430 new connections. Again, it reiterates the customer financial impact in dealing with departmental permitting, abandoning the septic tank, and connecting the piping from the house to the road, as well as the fees paid to the OUA for the connection. So that totaling around $2,400 per residential connection. If the board so includes, it does go forward the project and is so inclined, if they were to charge this over a 20-year, 25-year period as a non-ad valorem assessment, there is the annual cost to each residential connection ranging anywhere from $130 plus to $93 on an annual basis.
So we would give the customer the option of either paying it monthly or having it assessed on their tax
If it
bill?
was going to be on the tax roll, which is certainly the suggestion, it would be that annual amount that would appear on the tax roll as a non-ad valorem assessment.
I understand that, but my question was, do they have the option, or do we make the decision?
That would be decided by the board at the time we move forward. We do payment agreements, so they could do a monthly payment agreement if you were so inclined. But at this point, I don't know which way we would do it. I would certainly suggest, from a staffing position, that it's uniform, either all or nothing, one or the other.
Right.
To have some do some and some do another, it would probably be an administrative problem trying to keep up with who's doing monthly payments versus annual. And it's very plain to do the non-ad valorem assessment. But this is just, again, for informational purposes. A lot could change between now and then, as to how this evolves. Because we do make some assumptions here, state appropriations, state funding, from the Department of Economic Opportunity or the legislature, things could change.
Anything else, Mr.? Any questions for Executive Director? I assume you're done. You had that look in your eye.
Yes, sir. I'm sticking forward in the implementation.
Mr. Cohen.
I've got one. It's a dumb question. Just for, when do we have election of officers? When is that going to be due? Because I'm going through it with the school board right now. We're going to have election of officers tonight. It'll be in March. Okay.
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 March.
Okay, I wanted to be sure. I'll lose track of it by then, but that's okay. That's the only question I've got.
Any other questions for John?
Yeah. Do you want us to sign that document today, or do you want us to come by the office? What?
Determination.
Yeah.
You need to. We can do that, or, I don't have a problem with this stuff, but I tell you what, we'll make it available at the board meeting right after this, we can stop by the board, the office, or, is that possible? We can bring it to you?
I can stop by the office.
Long walk for you.
Yeah, long walk.
It's been decided, we'll sign this.
Okay, good executive decision. Well, I'd say so myself. All right, any items from the board?
Yes, I have one. I've got back to Mr. Connolly's thing about hiring Mr. Melville. Are we hiring Mr. Melville or Vosell and Berg?
Well, he works for them, but he is
Of
our,
council. He's of council. That's a big difference.
he will represent us. He will represent us.
Not Vosell and Berg.
No, Mr. Melville will represent us.
Individually through his office.
Yes.
Okay. Because if we got this letterhead here on Vosell and Berg, I was a little nervous. Who's actually working for us?
I wanted something to show you all that was done very, very quickly yesterday. I emailed him tried to call him. He called me back. I told him what this was about. Emailed him the suit. He said, I'll get you something right back. So our agreement was with Mr. Melville.
Okay, not Vosell and Berg.
No.
Okay, good. Anywhere?
Any other items for the board?
I had a question on drinking water. Are we doing a free chlorine flush?
What?
Did we do a robocall to notify everybody on that? Because I don't remember getting one.
I can't answer if there was the one-call service. I know they did the
Thanks, sir.
publishment in the paper, but I can check on that. I don't know if they did do a one-call. The answer is it was published in the paper and not a one-call service.
We ought to do a one call in the future.
In the radio, okay, so we did one call. And it was actually free chlorine residual as required by the state because we use chloramines in our system. And we had to switch over to a free chlorine residual at least once a year.
Right.
We do it twice a year, but we have to do it at least once a year. And this was the DEP mandated flush.
I had heard some customer comments about outrageous chlorine levels, and I told them that I'm sure that's what it was, but I don't get the paper, so I didn't see it.
The chlorine levels are generally the same throughout the year, but when we use chloramines, it tends to mask the smell of
Right.
chlorine residual, so you don't notice it as much, but it is generally the same throughout the year as far as the chlorine
Well,
level.
the one comment I remember was I got out of the shower, had to jump in the pool to get the chlorine off me.
Wow.
I hope it was heat.
Pretty strong.
I've received similar comments from neighbors.
Well, part of the other process that we run into is those folks with post-treatment systems in their house. When it gets the free chlorine residual, their equipment is also disinfected,
Right.
and it imparts a odor to the household. It's not us, it's from their equipment, but it's a process of converting over to free chlorine residual that imparts that taste and odor in the house or the business from their water treatment systems.
Yeah, in the past, we've done this robocall, the one call thing, and I think that's a good idea to continue doing that.
We could certainly do that.
Any other items for the board? Being none, I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you on the 5th of December. Meeting is adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you for being here.